We're just going to wait a few more minutes to get started, but I just want to let you all know we will be using the Q&A for this meeting. We don't have the live chat on. This is for security reasons, which we will get more into later. And only we see the questions that are being asked. So please, to be engaged in this town hall, and if you have anything to say, please put it in the Q&A and we will get to your question. We want to make sure everyone's voices are being heard while also keeping this webinar as secure as possible.
And I don't have my video on yet, but we are going to start at 5:38.
Yeah, so I just got a question in the Q&A. For those of us watching, will everyone's audio be automatically muted? Yes, you can't shout out and people can't hear you. Again, we're relying on the Q&A to make sure that everyone's voices are being heard. And again, this is for safety and security reasons because what happened at the last town hall, which again, we'll talk more about later. So yeah, thank you for asking that question. All right, everyone, I think we are going to get started. Just as a point of order, this is the student-only portion of the event. Faculty and staff and admin, you are welcome to come at 6:30, but we just really want to make this space students only for this first hour. So if you wouldn't mind leaving and coming back at 6:30 if you're able. Again, we'd really appreciate having you, but right now we can only have students here. Thank you. All right, so
Okay, are we ready to get started?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we just wanted to welcome everybody into the space. I know that it is midterm time and capacities are limited, and the 52 people on this call minus the 4 moderators shows that this is an important event and issue to be a part of, and so we want to thank you all to the space. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ty Moreno. I am a 20-month student, and I also hold the position of social chair on the student union. And I am happy to be a moderator today. My role as a moderator is going to look like introducing the town hall agenda, letting you all know what the panelists discussion is going to look like. And I'm also going to make sure to elevate student voices by monitoring the Q&A chat and making sure that everybody's questions, comments, or concerns are covered in real time. I understand that the engagement portion is a little watered down, but we did that for safety.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Morgan. I'm a second year MSW student and my pronouns are she or they. Either is totally fine with me. Yeah, I'm just someone who helped plan and organize this town hall. I will also be acting as a moderator. And then somebody asked a question about late registering, and if people who didn't register for the town hall can join. Just so everybody knows, you don't need to register to join. So the link's been emailed out and posted. If anybody is asking about joining, they can feel free to hop on the call.
Hi everyone, my name is Leslie Teta. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a second year student, MSW student, also acting as a moderator for tonight.
Hi everyone, I'm Bree Suggs, Vice President for the Student Union, She, Her, Hers, and I will also be moderating and happy to be here with you all. All right, so Morgan, would you like to explain why we're having this town hall?
Yeah, so a group of students started planning for and talking about having this town hall in response to all the discourse that has been going on within the School of Social Work, mainly via email, as I'm sure most of us have seen, and just like really wanting to have a space to have questions answered as directly as possible by the administration, and also for students to just get a sense of like what each other's concerns are, hear each other out in that way. Yeah, and I also just want to note that there were so many people that helped with putting together this town hall, and like thank you so much, just with organizing, helping plan out the initial email that went out, helping plan out the structure. Your efforts were very, very appreciated, and this would not be possible without you all. And yeah, just thank you to everybody who is here today. We couldn't do this without you. Our ultimate goal for this town hall is to, again, ask these questions directly of the administration and hopefully be able to develop some action steps that will be helpful to us as a community going forward. Yeah, so we will have a portion, the second hour of this meeting will be devoted to asking administration questions and hearing their answers. In this first hour, we're just going to be presenting the data from the Google form that we got and what students have been concerned about. And we're going to have a wrap up portion at the end of the administration section of the town hall where we are going to try to create some action steps.
Perfect. And I will briefly just go over some of the Zoom logistics that have already been mentioned. So we have Brian on the call who will help out a lot with the IT stuff. We're intentional with using Zoom webinar as opposed to the meeting Zoom that we use for regular classrooms. And this was done with the intention to make sure that this is a safe space and as safe as it can be. As it's been mentioned, we know that Zoom bombing happens. We know that these topics, specifically some of the themes that we'll be talking about, can be ones that people have very strong feelings for, and we want to make sure that there is no harm, or we want to reduce the harm that can be done throughout this meeting. So because of that, the chat function will not be used. And again, we recognize that that is done so that we can make sure that everyone is safe and that Zoom bombing isn't happening and harmful messages aren't being sent. So as an alternative, we're going to mostly be relying on the Q&A, which you may have already seen some people are asking questions, which we can see as panelists, and then we will make sure to verbally say the questions, as well as after this event, sending out all of the questions that were asked for the sake of keeping transparency with everyone. So yeah, I believe that's all for the for Q&A. And then also we'll, as Morgan said, the link for this is also online. So if you know other people that didn't get a chance to register, please make sure to let them know.
Thank you, Leslie. So kind of just want to reiterate the purpose and intention of this town hall. As you said, Morgan, a lot of students have expressed concerns and a lot of that has been going back and forth via email. We've previously had town halls in the past. This is our first one in a long time that is student led. So I'm really excited about that, but really creating a space where we can talk about these issues and have direct transparency with us as students and with admin, so we can kind of cultivate these action items that we're hoping to produce and discuss these issues that we're being impacted by and move forward with this information. So we're reflecting on issues that have happened in the school, reflecting on how town halls have been ran previously and how we're trying to be very intentful with what we're doing now. So feel free to continue to keep using the Q&A, and we will answer questions either live or via chat, via the question on that as well. So yeah, would you like to go ahead and take us into the agenda?
Yes, so I'm just going to briefly go over what our agenda is for today. So the first portion of this meeting, as we've said, is an hour that's for students only. Just reiterating, in case new people joined, if any faculty or admin or staff are here, please return at 6:30 because we really want this portion of the town hall to be students only, except for our IT support, which is necessary for safety. So basically what we're going to be doing is presenting the data we have from the Google form, and just kind of reading out the main topic areas of what people are concerned about to you all. So we kind of paid attention to themes when looking at the questions people were asking, and we grouped the questions into main theme buckets. So the themes that we're going to be discussing today are transparency from administration, is a huge one, incorporating anti-racist frameworks, general financial assistance, health and safety precautions, and then we have a couple of high impact questions that we felt would be important to cover, but didn't necessarily fit into one of those categories. We also will have a section at the end of the student-led portion where we're going to ask you all if we missed anything, because again, it's very, very important to us that we are covering everything that people want us to cover. We understand you might not have had a chance to get to the Google form. That's totally fine. We still want to hear your voice. So then in the second hour, we are going to have admin, faculty, and staff enter the space. They do know the subject areas that folks are concerned about, and they will be speaking to those concerns, and they will be answering questions. Again, if new questions come up, they're aware that new questions might come up or new topic areas might come up, and they will be prepared to answer those as well. And then we are going to have a portion at the end where we are going to wrap up the meeting and get into action steps. So that's the agenda. Feel free to ask any questions about the agenda, or as the meeting goes on, yeah, just feel free to type anything you want in the Q&A and we'll answer as quickly as we can.
Thanks, Morgan. Yeah, we are working on a way to share the agenda so you all have it as we work together on this. One thing that I wanted to do right now is go over one segment of the agenda. So as Morgan pointed out, we did delineate this into themes. And the first thing that we want to discuss is incorporating anti-racist frameworks into the school. So when we ask the panelists these questions, I'm going to ask them point blank because we use the feedback form and group together themes or common questions or common statements, and we put them under headers. So the first header that we're going to talk about is incorporating anti-racist frameworks. And the supporting feedback we got resembles, why did the School of Social Work not publicly support anti-policing? I'm going to answer or ask the question just like that. And then the panelists will have a choice, or will have the option to answer. And one thing that I will do as a moderator, if it becomes off track or if they're not really answering it point blankly, or if something comes up in the moderator's discussion or response that brings up a new question, I will also write that down and reframe another question to ask them. Some more supporting feedback that supports the theme of incorporating anti-racist frameworks into the school is, what is the School of Social Work actively doing to dismantle the systems that in U of M that are rooted in white supremacist, capitalistic, harm towards oppressed communities? I'm going to ask that question point blank, and we are going to give the panelists an opportunity to answer. Again, I'm going to do the same thing as a moderator. I'm going to make sure that, you know, nothing's getting segued or that the question is being answered point blank. And before I go on any further, we want to give you the opportunity right now to use the Q&A function and to add anything that you think goes underneath the header of incorporating anti-racist frameworks. And I'm asking that because we want to make sure that everybody had a chance to have their voices heard. Not everybody got to use the feedback form. So if you do have something that you want to add to incorporating anti-racist frameworks, go ahead and put that in the chat. Okay, so one question we have is, when incorporating an anti-racist framework to the curriculum, what efforts are being made specifically to decolonize the school's pedagogy? So that's something that I will keep and place in the theme of incorporating anti-racist frameworks. And yes, this town hall is recorded, so we will be sending that out, as well as we do have a note taker and also somebody who is taking notes for people who are hearing impaired. And so those will also be sent out.
So there was a quick question about live transcripts. That is available. You have to actually click live transcript in order for that to pop up on your screen. So if you're still having trouble after doing that, just let us know and we'll see where we can work from there. But yes, thanks.
I think we got a couple more questions. So one of them is, how are we still ethically accepting people into the program, knowing how far behind we are in our anti-racist pedagogy? Why are we still marketing our program as #1 to incoming students? And someone asked a question about, will context be included before and when these questions are asked? Yes, we'll include as much context as we can. That being said, we don't have all the context for every question that was asked, so we can solicit more context from you all if you want to help us out with that in the Q&A section. But yeah, so we'll do the best we can to provide context from the information we have.
Are there any more questions or comments or concerns that need to be placed under incorporating anti-racist frameworks within the school? Okay, if there are any more or you all are still thinking, that's fine. I will catch it and paste it into our panelist discussion format. We're using that to guide our dialogue with admin. Morgan, do you want to move on to the next theme?
Yes, we can. Are we doing the transparency from administration now, or would you rather do that later?
Oh, sure. Yeah, definitely. I can do that. I'm so sorry.
Oh, don't worry.
Another header, another header or theme that we pulled out from the feedback form that was sent out to the listserv is transparency from admin. Surprise. So the supporting feedback that we are using to prompt questions is how we are underutilizing student representatives who are already on committees. So we know that due to the history of organizing in the school, there have been a lot of task forces and DEI committees started. And we also know before my cohort even came in, ABSW and a lot of the BIPOC students have placed demands on the administration and have asked them to incorporate those demands or at least speak on them. And that has been a slow process, slow and not quite steady. So this first question that I'm going to ask is around how we are underutilizing student representatives on committees. The second question that I'm going to ask is supported around the question about dialogue within the School of Social Work. So we do know that there is a lot of activity on the listserv. We also know that there is a lot of mass emails going around asking admin to respond. You know, a lot of these mass emails are calls to action. And so we're going to pose this to admin during the panelist discussion. Another thing we want to address is lack of communication from administration about things in real time. We do know that they can communicate with us. We want to increase the frequency. We also want to know, why didn't the School of Social Work administration publicly support the GEO strike? We know that a lot of staff and faculty did, but it was very ambiguous throughout the whole ordeal about how admin was responding. Oh, I'm sorry, the captions. Moderators are working on making sure the captions are enabled. Another question that supports transparency from admin is, did faculty feel they could not support the GEO strike for fear of retaliation? So we want to prompt these questions to admin surrounding transparency and go from there. So one thing that I do want to ask is, do we have any comments or questions that go along with transparency from admin? Is there anything we missed? We have something in the chat. For context, the School of Social Work has been historically hostile to GEO. Thank you for that. I can copy and paste that, or copy pasta it into my dialogue prompts, and that's really helpful. Are there any other things that you want us to bring up during panelist discussions underneath the header of transparency from admin? And let me say something really quick. We know that transparency from admin is very broad. So there are more themes that will branch off from that, but these are the big main themes that we got from the feedback form. Another comment, doc students are compiling a history of this hostility. Thank you, doc students. We appreciate you, and we're happy to have you here. Okay. Something else from the chat. Someone stated that they were under the impression that the dean had made a statement about the GEO strike, saying that any graduate student employees that do not show up for work should be reported to HR by professors that are witnessing them participating. Thank you for that comment. I think that is something that is not, I didn't know anything about that. And I think that's something they can comment on. And that goes along with fear of retaliation as well. Like, how is the School of Social Work supporting their students and helping create a safe culture and environment? Okay, so someone also put in a comment, why wasn't there more transparency, re COVID cases within the School of Social Work? Valid. I found out only by my individual teachers, not admin. That is something that I think has been tossed around with mass emails as well. I do think that that is relevant to this category, and I will take that down. Also, which administration will be present? Thank you for that question. Although we have an official list, I think Barb Hiltz, Aaron Zimmer, Dean Bitica, Tim Collenbach, Dan Fisher, and some representatives from committees such as Praxis, the DEI Task Force, Lorraine Gutierrez, and Larry Gant. Okay, one more call for any other comments or questions underneath the header of transparency from admin.
I think there's a few more in the Q&A.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot to scroll. Okay, I do want to say that it is 5:57, so we do have a half hour until admin gets here, and we're only through a couple. So I'm not going to address all of these publicly, but I am going to take them all down and use them as contacts and address them, rest assured. Okay, so let me read a couple more. I'm going to do 1 more minute of this, and then we're going to move on to another theme. All right. So we have a question for admin. Most schools at the U of M have moderating mechanisms for ensuring that student listservs are not overspammed by emails with limited appeal or interest, right? School of Social Work does not seem to do this, as we receive endless emails of the sort muddying the waters of more substantive email dialogue. Valid. Can the School of Social Work step up to avoid information overload and ensure that important calls for community action are not lost in minimally important emails about documentary screenings? Thank you for that question and comment. I do think that's something that a lot of us are thinking. For context, I can say that the School of Social Work did close the listserv and create subsectors of the listserv. So management leadership has its own email listserv, QAC has its own listserv, and the School of Social Work.msw is its own listserv. So I think that as far as regulating, that's the extent, and a lot of it is on us to set up filters. But I could be wrong, and we will pose this to the School of Social Work. I'm just commenting on it right now. All right, one last question, and then I will uphold my end of the bargain and copy and paste the rest of them and put them under the section header of transparency from admin. Okay. A question about field. Are we going to be staying home from field if it is in person? And I assume that this is in regards to the new stay-at-home order. I think that it's a really good question to ask, and I will put it down as context. Okay. Thank you. Morgan, do you want to talk about, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and just so you all know, we have a whole section about health and safety. We know that most of these sections could probably fit under the heading of transparency from admin, just because that is pretty vague. But there were so many questions about like public health concerns that we're gonna have a whole portion of this Q&A dedicated to that. Okay. Yes, we can move on. So this section is about general financial assistance. We got a lot of questions from students about specifically mostly the winter semester. And yeah, I think a lot of people just have questions right now about what the winter semester is going to look like. Is it going to be virtual? If it is virtual, will there be a tuition reduction? And these aren't really things that we've heard either from the School of Social Work Administration or the larger University of Michigan administration, which the School of Social Work Administration is our bridge to the larger U of M administration. So some supporting feedback we got, like more specific targeted questions that people were asking are, what can students do to advocate against tuition increases if we continue to be hybrid or online? I know that that's a concern that a lot of people have. Yeah, just how tuition either hasn't changed or has gone up, with things not being obviously the educational experience that we were necessarily expecting. Yeah, so that's something that the administration knows is going to be brought up in their portion of the town hall. I don't have answers right now, but hopefully they do have some. And then another thing that came up a few times is additional financial aid, and the additional financial aid being offered to students throughout the pandemic. My understanding is that there are financial aid opportunities, but that there hasn't been a lot of transparency around what those opportunities are. It's almost a situation where it's like students can apply for this COVID aid, but only if they know that the COVID aid exists, which is not helpful. So yeah, I know folks have a lot of concerns about tuition specifically. I'm just checking the chat. Okay, so someone asked, can we ask admin? Oh, sorry, that's a different question. Okay, someone asked, Someone said the school should send more grants to students to offset tuition. We can raise that for sure. Thank you for bringing that up. Someone said, in addition to tuition cost, we are still being charged extra fees when majority of us are online only. Yeah, that's true. I know that, you know, people have frustrations about, for example, like the student life fee. And yeah, just validating those concerns, and that will for sure be brought up during the administration portion. Does anyone else have things they'd like to put in the Q&A about tuition, financial assistance, financial aid, anything that we are missing that would be useful to raise to admin? Didn't U of M get any extra money for students due to the pandemic? EMU gave $400 to students. I don't know. But again, that's something that we can ask if they do have that money to offer. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
With that, I do want to say that the larger campus had the federal care or like money that they got through the government. However, the deadline for that through UM's financial aid office was the last Friday, and that was something that wasn't really known to a lot of folks. So that is definitely like another concern that we can bring up in terms of what funding is available due to COVID to all students.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering that, Leslie. So yeah, I think that kind of goes under the major concern, which is that there are these options out there and then people don't know about them, which isn't their fault. It's because there's not a lot of transparency. Okay, is the School of Social Work doing extra development work with donors to secure more funding for students suffering most from COVID-related issues? That's a great question. Yeah, I think a lot of people would like to know what their efforts are around that. Okay. GEO strike was demanding an emergency stipend for all grad students. That's some great context. Thank you for that. If admin responds that they are not in control of tuition prices, can we press them to see if they are advocating that costs can be reduced? Are they advocating on our behalf? Again, really great point. Yeah, and yes, I think we can do that. Can we specifically ask why the School of Social Work did not make it widely known that the CARES funds were available? Yes, yes, we can do that. And then U of M gave out U of M Federal CARES Act was given out with priority to those who first applied way back in August. So for example, the first couple hundred med students who knew about it got $1,000. Lately, students in need have been getting less than 100. Ooh, that just like, I just had a very visceral rage reaction to hearing that. Yeah, thank you for that context. While this is a big ask, can we push our admin to advocate against the university's austerity measures, / lack of using our massive endowment and general lack of support for students and other community members? Sorry, I'm just reading this again. Sure. So, okay, what I'm getting from this question is like similar to what we've heard from other folks, like how much can we push administration to advocate against the larger universities measures, which I think has come up a lot. Thank you. Someone said they're not advocating for MSW tuition to be reduced. It's the main income stream for the school. Good point. Yeah, why did U of M raise tuition when most Ivy League schools froze tuition or didn't raise prices? Good question. School of Social Work may not be able to unilaterally reduce tuition, but they can give out tuition rebates as they see fit. Okay, thank you. I do want to make sure that we have time for the other sections, although I know this is like really, really important. Yes, so I think we should move on to the next section for now, but again, we're going to have a portion at the end of the student-led section where folks are welcome to bring up anything that hasn't been raised, or yeah, that anything that we missed or anything that hasn't been raised. So yeah, we're going to move on right now, but thank you so much for all of your thoughtful questions and comments.
So the next theme that we had, or the next header, is regarding health and safety precautions. And we've already started to have some questions regarding COVID, as well as other concerns that people have. So from the feedback form, some folks raised up points about Zoom bombing, and I believe that was in regards to what happened during the last town hall. There was a specific question saying, what specific institutional policies would prevent the school social work from autonomously being ultimately moved? Sorry about that. There was a typo that I made in my head. So the question's essentially asking what institutional policies are preventing the school from being moved to a completely remote format. There's also questions about in terms of COVID, why hasn't there been more transparency with COVID cases, specifically at the school social work? One person earlier in the Q&A said, I only found out from my individual teacher, not admin. Another concern raised is, can the school social work provide COVID testing for students at field sites? And then what is the actual protocol for when a student is confirmed with COVID? I did see earlier on there was a question that regarding marijuana testing, and we can make sure to bring that up during the faculty or the admin side when it comes to health and safety regarding being tested while also dealing with chronic illnesses. Are there other questions that may have not been captured um, in the feedback form that other folks want to share in the Q&A portion? And we, again, understand that health and safety is very broad, so it doesn't necessarily need to do with COVID. It can be about anything that you believe fits under this category. And I see a question from someone asking about, are you guys going to time the responses from admin? So we definitely want to be mindful of time. So even for the student section, we're allowing approximately like 8 minutes for each of the headers so that we have time to fully use the hour with admin to make sure that all of these questions or these headers are addressed. So for that section, we'll also be using a time limit, and they are aware of that. Another question regarding health and safety is, has admin/faculty/staff considered reaching out to School of Social Work students to do individual wellness check-ins during the stressful time? This has been done in other schools across campus, and we can make sure to specifically ask that because that is a very important topic. Are there any additional questions that haven't been captured in health and safety? All right, so,
Sorry, I was just going to say one that I saw coming up a lot in the Google form was about field and testing. So yeah, just everyone be aware that that is definitely something that we are going to be asking about, like possibilities for that, why it's not happening now. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
okay, so if you have any additional questions, we'll be monitoring the Q&A, so please feel free to put in any questions you have, but we will be transitioning to the next header so that we have time to cover all of the different ones.
So this portion of feedback, we just called high impact questions because we got two questions that we thought were important to cover, but we didn't really know what other section to put them under. So this first question is, how are faculty being supported to deliver the best possible class experience? The way I interpreted that was, obviously this is not a normal time and this isn't what instructors were preparing for. So how is the administration making them feel supported and empowered to deliver a virtual class experience? Yeah, and I think there have been concerns around professors maybe not feeling like they can do an entirely remote class. And so I think the concern is what is being done to ensure that they can do that if that's what they feel would be best. So does anyone have any questions or comments about that question specifically, or context that you might have about what the administration is doing right now around that? Okay, this question is the School of Social Work investing in additional tech support by hiring staff to support remote classes? That is a great question. So yeah, we can definitely bring that up in the admin section. Okay. Sorry, this was back on health and safety, but I'm just gonna call it out. Okay, did U of M as a whole, you meaning the administration, I'm assuming, have any models or predictions of how bad local COVID outbreaks would be when you were messaging for a public health informed fall semester? Okay, yeah, thank you for that question. Okay, is there anything else around how faculty are being supported to deliver quality classes right now? I think the question about tech support is a really strong one. All right, I'm not seeing anything. Yeah, feel free to throw something in the chat if you think of something. This next question, I definitely want to make time and space for. So yeah, we're going to move on right now. But again, feel free to ask a question if you have one.
So the next question was from the Google feedback form, which stated a professor quitting before being fired due to sexual misconduct. Again, we don't have a lot of context regarding these high impact questions, but because we want to value transparency, we wanted to give space for folks, if they feel comfortable, to share any additional questions that they have or any information that they do know. Again, admin will have time to address this specific question, but we wanted to give us all time to just ask any questions or give any additional details if you feel comfortable.
So we will definitely give you all some time to think about that. You can, I don't know if you mentioned already, but you can also respond anonymously. So you don't have to, there will be no repercussions if you do want to share some confidential information. But also, so we just want to be mindful of time. It is 6:16. Admin should be logging on around 6:25, 6:30. But there was a question about repeating the sexual misconduct. Leslie, can you do that?
Yeah, so again, this is based on what a person responded in the Google form. So there's nothing else that I personally know about this. But someone said a professor quitting before being fired due to sexual misconduct. And I believe that the student was bringing this up as a concern to bring up to admin rather than a specific question. I believe that the person is looking for some more context as well as transparency. But we wanted to make sure that we had space to give you all an awareness that we will be bringing this up with admin during the later portion of this town hall.
And I do think a lot of individuals are wondering about that question as we are as well. You know, if like this staff was local to the School of Social Work, if we all engage with this individual, or, you know, if it's something that everyone heard through the grapevine. And so, you know, when we ask you for feedback right now, we're asking for context and we're asking, for supporting information or supporting feedback to help us guide the panelist discussions, because it is really important to us that you all feel included while we uphold these safety precautions with the Zoom webinar.
So there's another question, and there are a couple of questions in the chat. What are ways the fall student survey will be used to effectively meet the needs and expectations of students in the future, especially as a large majority of students who took the survey expressed strong interest in virtual only classes? How will you address this concerns about the internet access and access to computers? I think that's a great question. We will definitely look into that. And another question is, how are pre-scheduled faculty sabbaticals being impacted by school social work COVID responses? Good question. So, and we are, just so folks know, we are taking all these questions down. So though we may not have time to address every single one, we're recording this, and we will hope that this can continue to infiltrate conversation and action steps moving forward. There's another question in the chat. You of them said that they would be enacting a stay-at-home order at the School of Social Work, said that they are moving online. How will football affect this? Feel free to keep sending questions.
I think one thing about the response about the stay-at-home order is that multiple articles were reporting that it is specific for U of M, the U of M community. And I know that there were some emails sent in the listserv about the responsibility of the U of M community. And in regards to football season, I think largely that the stay-at-home order was implemented to deter a lot of, I don't know, social distance activities occurring, maybe like social distance tailgate, if you ever heard of one. I haven't, but that's one of the big reasons why the stay-at-home order was implemented for the U of M community.
I just want to name right now. So we are capturing all of these questions. We think they're all really important. None of them are more important than another. I do want to recognize and name that the admin portion of the town hall is only an hour, and they might not have time to answer every question. And we might not have time to ask every question, just to be fully transparent around that. But we are capturing these all and sending them out to them. So all of your questions will be taken into consideration, and answers will be solicited. So yeah, if you don't hear your question coming up in the admin portion of the town hall, it's not because we forgot about it. It's not because we don't think it's important. It's just for the sake of time.
So again, it is 6:20. Continue to please pull in your questions and move. We'll continue to track those. Admin should be joining us within 5-10 minutes. Do want to thank you all for taking the time to be here and be in this space and to share your authentic questions and concerns. And we really appreciate you all being vulnerable in this space and admitting how you've been feeling throughout the program. So please continue to share questions, and we will continue to name them as we receive them.
Yes.
I do want to say one second. I do want to say that during the admin panelist discussion portion, we are having a moderator monitor that chat. And so we are going to do our best to make sure that everything that is said is incorporated during the discussion.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say, if you want to take a break right now, this is probably a great time to do that. But we also, if there's anything that we missed, if there's anything that we didn't bring up just now that you think that should be brought up in the admin portion of the town hall, this is also a good time to post that in the Q&A. Especially if it's something that was unrelated to something we were talking about, so it hadn't come up naturally before now. We also want to be mindful that that could happen. Oh, okay. Someone had a question. Someone asked, are you going to refresh this chat area so admin can't see who is asking what? So Oh, so when we send out questions, so admin don't see these questions during the town hall. We're going to send out questions later, but we can do that anonymously.
Yeah,
Does that answer
there
your
are
question?
no names being attached to any of the
Yeah.
questions or comments, and we're separating them based off their
Right.
relevance of
Yeah, and if you're sending in questions with your name attached to them, we're being very mindful about not using your names. So yes, this is all anonymous and confidential.
So I encourage folks to take a break. People will be joining in a few minutes, and we'll keep this going.
Sorry, also I want to add, if you want to be named and you have strong feelings around that, feel free to let us know. But we're going to assume that anonymous unless someone says otherwise.
And Ryan Bankston, the IT professional from the School of Social Work, is standing by. Ryan can answer the question about admin seeing the Q&A right now.
Yeah, we could go back and delete all of the questions that have names that were not anonymous if they've been recorded otherwise. I'm pretty sure if we go back and delete it in the Q&A when we pull the report later, just to make sure for full transparency, we have all the questions that they will also be deleted. So I wouldn't want to delete those until the team here has recorded all of the questions just for full transparency. But if we're ready for that, then yes, we can delete the questions out of the Q&A. Looks like we've got 52 answered. And then it would be 0 answered if we delete all of them to kind of restart at 6:30, if that's what y'all want to do.
Sounds good. I'll capture these last 2 questions. I'll be taking a break. And then for those who are remaining, we'll make sure there's no confidential attached to that. So we'll be joining back in at 6:30. See ya. Welcome back, everyone. Our admin is currently logging on now. Let's give them a couple of minutes so they can do that, and we can start the Q&A momentarily. Hello.
Hi, Brianna. How are you? Hi, everyone.
Hi, Dean. We're just waiting for everybody to log in. We'll probably give it about 2 to 3 minutes.
Hello, welcome. We're just waiting for a few folks to log in, and then once you see everyone, feel free to go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining us tonight. Looks there might be a concern about logging in. Okay. I think we need to put Abigail as a panelist as well.
Yep, give me 1 second.
Okay.
Thanks for being willing, Abigail.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Are we all ready to get started?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah, I think we're ready. So before we do get started, I just want to address some of the Q&A concerns I'm seeing folks having. First of all, the Q&A, the new panelists who have entered can't see the old questions that were asked before they entered. So don't worry about that. We captured all the questions separately. You'll remain anonymous. Please keep in mind for this portion of the town hall, all of the administration you see on here are panelists, so they can see the questions as well. So if you would prefer to remain anonymous, make sure that you're asking the question anonymously. If you don't mind your name being attached to it, that's totally fine, of course, but I just want people to be aware of that before we continue. I do want to establish some group norms going into this portion of the town hall, and then we can get started. So some group norms that we have kind of talked about are having respect. And I think respect is something that's often kind of misunderstood when it's talked about in these spaces, because treating people with respect does not mean that any problematic statements should be swept aside or not acknowledged. So that is not what we're advocating for at all. I just want to name that part of community respect is acknowledging when somebody has caused harm, no matter if it's inadvertent or not, and working to amend that harm as much as possible. So that is how I interpret respect. We also want to discuss sharing the space. We have a lot to get through today, so we just want everybody to be mindful of time and how much space they are taking up in this portion of the town hall. And we kind of want people to be mindful of how their own identities might be impacting the amount of space that they're willing to take up. So just want to name that. And then, of course, we want people to stay engaged through this portion of the town hall, just as you were in the last hour. If you are a student, please feel free to keep posting in the Q&A. We really rely on your feedback, especially because we can't see you. And yeah, also please be mindful, again, just reiterating that if you want your question to be asked anonymously during the Q&A portion, that you're putting your name as anonymous, and it's totally fine if you don't want to do that. Okay, so that's all the group norms we have. I think if that sounds okay to everyone, we're ready to get into the more action step portion of this town hall.
All right.
Okay, just give me 1 second. I am just trying to get my notes together. So Edmund, I just want to say hi. Nice to see all of you who know me, and nice to meet all of you who don't. The first theme that we have divided out from the town hall feedback that was sent out to students was transparency from admin. So we gathered all of this town hall feedback, and in the student portion, we talked about all of the questions that you're going to ask and the supporting evidence that was the framework for those questions. So under the theme of transparency from admin, I'm going to ask you 1 or 2 questions at a time as they are relevant. And if you need, you can ask moderators to provide context. But moderators are controlling or moderating the Q&A section. So if you do have any questions, concerns, or need for clarification, please ask moderators directly. And the first question that I am going to propose from the transparency from admin is, why didn't the School of Social Work administration publicly support the GEO strike?
So that question is probably for me. And I will say that in my role as dean, actually quite a few members of the faculty did support the strike, and many students did as well, and that was fine. But in my role as dean, I felt it was important to stay neutral, in part because my role is for the whole school, not one constituency or another, and also for the whole university. And I think my neutrality has been interpreted by some as not supportive of the GL strike, not at all. It was just that I felt, because I was the dean and respond to all constituencies of the school, that it was important for me not to take a position and instead really, work to promote the kind of negotiation that has to go into a settlement, whether it's a pre-strike or during a strike settlement. So I felt that was the best way to proceed in my role as dean.
Thank you, Dean. I think this question was prompted by a lack of communication from the administration and the belief that neutrality is silence. And so when that belief is spread throughout the School of Social Work, we get a lot of mass emails through the listserv, right? And we get a lot of questions about dialogue within the School of Social Work. And so one of the big questions posed here is, how can you mitigate that, the neutrality that becomes silence, and increase dialogue within the School of Social Work in real time?
I would welcome suggestions for doing that. I think in normal times, we might have had meetings or town halls about it. And I really would welcome from students to hear some suggestions for what would be the right format, because the truth is we're not of one mind in the school. And that's perfectly fine. That's, our policy is to let people act based on what they judge to be the best actions for themselves. And so I think the mechanism is, I understand students felt there was a lack of opportunity for communication. I would have looked forward to, providing that, and look forward to your ideas for how during COVID we can achieve that communication.
Thank you. So something that School of Social Work student body was doing was comparing to what other programs in the school were doing as well, such as the law school publicly supporting GEO. And, we also are aware of fear of retaliation, because that happens in any role that we have when there's a bureaucratic hierarchical system in place. And we are aware of those external pressures. So we're not coming with these questions, placing it all on you. We are just looking for explanations. And so one thing is, yes, other schools did support the GEO strike publicly. And also, some people said that you asked for names of people participating in the strike to report to HR. Can you comment on that?
Well, that was, no, I did not ask for names. In fact, I had put out a statement just to clarify that everyone, faculty, of course, and students were empowered to make their own choices about canceling classes, for example, to support the union. And there were no repercussions and so on. The actual formal, I think what got misinterpreted is the actual formal HR policy was to inform HR. However, we did not do anything. We did not do that, so.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. For context, the School of Social Work has been historically hostile to GEO, so I think that's also fueling these questions and responses and beliefs in the School of Social Work. And also, some people were under the impression that you, Dean Vidica, made a statement about the GEO strike saying that employees that do not show up for work should be reported to HR by professors. I'm assuming that is what you were commenting on in regards to policy and procedure, but you chose not to.
Yeah, that was a direct quote from directives that we got from Human Resources. However, we did not monitor and we did not report, make any reports.
I think when in the beginning, when we asked about more dialogue, I think those are things that could be reported in real time, just for a suggestion. But moving on, somebody asked, why hasn't there been more transparency about COVID cases in School of Social Work? They found out by mostly individual teachers, not admin. Can you comment on that?
Well, the individual, first of all, we've had one student, this fall, we've had one student case of COVID in the school, one. And the actual procedure was, no schools are publicizing the who has COVID or publicizing that school-wide. So the procedure was that faculty members would inform their own classes, because faculty members got notified if someone in their class tested positive for COVID. So that was the plan all along, because that would then alert students who may have had interaction with someone who is positive.
Thank you. Just for admin's reference, we do have 4 more minutes under this header, so I am going to pile some questions together. One question that we have is, what is the protocol for a student who has been positive in the building? And what is the protocol for them re-entering, and for the rest of the School of Social Work to know, because I think it's important that we do know without, releasing private health information.
So for detailed information, I want to refer you to the COVID-19 website, which is, there's a link on the front page of our website. So the protocol is nobody with any symptoms we do screening. We're one of the only schools who are doing screening to step into the building. So nobody with symptoms or nobody with a fever can even enter the building. And then once the university manages, once someone has been diagnosed with COVID, then they are under the university's monitoring, and then when their doctor clears them, then they're able to come back to.
Okay, so a lot of self-reporting, and I think one question was about accountability, how as admin holding themselves accountable, but I'm gonna move on to another question. So a couple other people.
I'm sorry, but I just wanted to clarify something about that last statement. So my name is Lorraine Gutierrez. I'm Associate Dean for Educational Programs at the school.
Thank you for introducing yourself.
I'm part of the admin. Not everyone has met me. I just wanted to clarify that it's actually not self-reporting. What it is in terms of positive COVID cases. When a student is diagnosed with a positive COVID case, then their doctor alerts the health department alerts the university, and the university alerts the professor and also alerts Dean Videka. So it's the honor system of a student has to, that we're just listening to the students. We actually get an official notification from the health department. So I just, based on what you said before, I just wanted to clarify. I didn't want people to leave thinking
thank you.
We weren't getting
absolutely
official notifications.
Yeah, and we invite that feedback as well. We're just wondering when we get those official notifications. One thing I want to move on to is many field placements require drug testing screens that for marijuana per federal law and guidelines. So a certain group of people, who have chronic health conditions or, special circumstances do use medical marijuana to manage their illness. And so they're wondering, what the field office is doing about transparency and about what field sites require drug testing, and what can administration do to ensure that drug testing field placement sites are clearly labeled. And this will be my last question.
Thanks, Tyler. I'm Dan Fisher, Assistant Dean for Field Education. We have a number of field agencies depending upon the vulnerable populations that they may be servicing. That require drug screens, healthcare institutions, for example, many mental health institutions, especially inpatient programs, require drug testing. We typically would want students to be able to communicate with us if they're using medical marijuana or have it for medical purposes, so we can help them find field placements that would be a better fit. We have certainly worked with organizations around use of medical marijuana and the legalization of marijuana currently. I think many institutions are still struggling, to be frank with you, around how to be able to navigate that with their requirements at work. What we do our best to do is we do the same thing, I think, with students that may have criminal background issues that would show up on criminal background checks too, to make sure that we find agencies for them that don't necessarily require those checks. That allow them to be able to get those field placements. So we work very closely with students that report to us.
Thank you. I think one big thing that you touched on, Dan, was that you are allowing students to come to you with that information, that there should not be any fear of retaliation, and that they should be offered an opportunity to make a relationship with you in the field office around that. That's what I heard you say.
Yep, very much so.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, admin, thank you for participating in the theme of transparency from admin. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you working with me. I'm going to move on to the next theme. I'm also going to cover that. This theme is titled Incorporating Anti-Racist Frameworks Within the School of Social Work. The first question that I want to ask point blankly, that was from the feedback form that we gathered from the students, was why did the School of Social Work not publicly support anti-policing efforts?
So may I ask a question of clarification? Is this in regard to the GEO
Absolutely.
strike? Because
I think that it can be in regard to the GEO strike and also implementing anti-racist practices within the School of Social Work.
Sure. Well, I will begin this. Others may want to add something. So in terms of the GEO strike, we just didn't comment on it. We've had quite a few anti-policing seminars and webinars this summer. So we've really been active with the topic, and there's a huge debate going on between the abolitionists and the reformists, and that is a real debate. It's within our profession, it's within the school, and we've tried to provide a variety of forums that will where that can be addressed and people can really think through their position. I want to say I'm really pleased today. The provost sent out an announcement about anti-race, or in the record today, there was an article based on the provost's announcement of anti-racism initiatives and for the campus. And number one is a task force that's going to examine policing and anti-racism on the campus. And there's several other anti-racism initiatives at the campus level as well as within the school. And I'll let some of my colleagues, if there's time, talk about some of the school-based initiatives.
Thank you for answering my question. I know a lot of reactions to that response may be, where was that advertised or when did we hear about that? So after this event, we will send unanswered questions to admin and ask for actionable responses. So thank you, Dean.
Sure.
Somebody else saying something?
Yeah, so this is Lorraine Gutierrez again, and Professor Gant and I, Larry Gant, who's also here, and I are prepared to say something about the DEI task force that we co-chair. So we co-chair a task force that Dean Videka formed during the summer to address issues of racism in the School of Social Work and address the demands that we received from ABSW and the Doctoral Students Organization regarding dismantling racism and addressing anti-racism in the school. And we have a task force. I hope that at least some of the people on this here are familiar with it and perhaps are even on it. It's equal numbers of students, faculty, and staff. So the task force is actually half students and then half faculty and staff. Mm-hmm. And these are students who are nominated and selected by the Doctoral Students Organization or the Social Work Student Union. So, we've been doing, our major work has been going through the list of demands and creating work plans and action plans for each individual demand. Some of the demands have already been met. For example, there was one demand that Dean Videka send a letter to the Council on Social Work Education regarding an accreditation standard that would talk about anti-racism. And she did that immediately after we received the ABSW demands. And she did send an email out to the entire School of Social Work community informing us of that, and also sent a copy of the letter to everybody over the summer. And I will turn this over, because I don't want to do all the talking, to Professor Gant, if you want to say anything more about what we've been doing in the DEI task force.
I'll just underscore, and hi, my name is Larry Gant, and I am professor and also director of the School of Social Work DEI office, Division Equity and Inclusion office. And Dr. Gutierrez and I, do co-chair that particular task force. And the students have been very, very helpful in articulating exactly what is meant by anti-racist discourse, distinguishing that from anti-racism. We have identified several possible models. As well, there are schools of social work that we have identified that are implementing or trying to articulate at least a couple of these models of anti-racist and anti-racist organizing. One of the big challenges is that there are multiple models. And just because a model is identified as anti-racist does not in fact make it anti-racist. So students and we are exploring those in detail. And it is very encouraging to see the students dig into this and do some discovery and talk about the importance of clarifying exactly what is meant and what is not meant by anti-racism and anti-racist organizing. So I think that the students are in discovery mode. And I think that we are all finding that it's a little bit harder than we thought, but it's ever so much more important.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gann. I appreciate that. I do understand, about incorporating. I think a lot of the school social work does, depending on where they are in their program or experience, understands the need for equitable tools and measurements for, to measure, adequate outcomes. But I think this question also goes along with transparency from admin, where we are asking for maybe in the DEI letters or whatnot, that progress in some kind of chart, in a Gantt chart or anything. I think that it was also part of one of the demands. And I don't think it is just on students that are also doing the work and providing the feedback to also advertise the progress. I think that's something that, people were getting stuck on and wondering about. We know a lot of our peers are on committees and we know a lot of students are doing work. But students want to know what people are doing on these task force. They want to know if the demands are being met in terms of compensation, or is everybody being compensated for the work on the task force as well? So about transparency, not necessarily about the nuances of the process. We just want to know things in real time. And we also want to know, are the demands being met? Is the work aligning with demands?
And I quickly just want to say that Lorraine will be sharing those demands. I know a lot of new students aren't familiar what those are, and we're referencing that. So just you can look at that link to kind of familiarize yourself about where this work is coming from. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And we do have about 2 or 3 more minutes on this. So please, admin, just take what I said with you. And when there is an actionable process implemented where we send you questions and weren't able to be answered, just keep your responses in mind from that question. But I'm going to move on and ask about the admission process. We want to know about, how are you all still admitting individuals who are not familiar with an anti-racist framework while promoting us being the #1 school of social work? And I think this question is prompted from experience in the classroom.
Right. Well, I think one of the realities of the School of Social Work is that we feel pretty strongly that when students come here, they learn that people are different when they come as when they leave. And as someone who's been around for a bit, I've seen a number of students that came in that were pretty maybe ignorant and hadn't been exposed to a lot of the anti-racism work that we do in social work, and really came to a very different place during their time in the school. And I think we believe that we shouldn't just talk to people who are already fully woke in the School of Social Work, and that we should have people who have a good heart, but maybe have some things to learn in this area of social work and in just how they perceive society. Most of the students historically that have come into the School of Social Work have been 22, 23, 24 years old in the master's program. Some of them may not have the experiences of going to an undergraduate institution or K through 12 educational system where there was a lot of diversity. So we believe pretty strongly that it's important to educate those folks that may be at the beginning of the process of understanding what it's like to be a social worker, as well as those that may have a tremendous amount of experience within a social work and maybe have been doing a lot of work in that area. And one of the great things about the school, I think, is that that latter group of students often helps that new set of students to social work to learn about these most important issues. And that's, to me, is what's important about an educational institution, is that you help students wherever they're at when they start to move along and continue to a better understanding how to be a good social worker, how to help people effectively, how to help communities effectively. So I don't think that as a school, we've ever thought that we don't want to bring students in who may need to learn a lot in that area, as well as students who may have a very strong understanding of that area of social work, but may be new to other areas of social work and get something out of the program in a different way. So Abigail can talk a little bit about the role of the Recruitment Admissions Student Services and Financial Aid Committee as it relates to setting up the criteria for admission, and they're part of the admissions.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. We do want to move on to the next theme because it is almost 7. But again, there is going to be an actionable items doc sent after we are capturing all the questions in the chat and also what admin are responding as. And so that will be sent out to you all so we can capture this so all students can read those responses and engage. But we are going to move on to the next theme, general financial assistance, and Morgan is going to take the lead on that. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. If you don't know me, my name's Morgan. My pronouns are she or they, either is fine, and I'm one of the moderators today. I am going to be pretty firm about timing for this section, so I may have to cut you off when you're answering a question. I'll try to do that just by like raising my hand. But yeah, I just really want to make sure we have time for all of this really important information. So just wanted to give you a heads up about that. So around general financial assistance, we did get a lot of concerns from students around tuition for the winter, specifically if the winter does end up being completely online or a hybrid semester. We got some questions from folks around, why they're being asked to pay the student life fee, or why tuition hasn't gone down more significantly for services they're not using. So if somebody can briefly speak to that. I also just want to remind you all that you'll also have an opportunity to answer these questions in more detail after the town hall if you feel like you can't do this in like a timely way right now.
I will begin, and I will say, since it's specifically about winter term and tuition levels, and that is that the tuition levels for the university are set by the university, not at the individual school level. There is a variation in tuition school to school, but the actual tuition decisions are made by the Board of Regents, and there is a detailed protocol. I don't have all the information at my fingertips about certain fees that were abated or put aside. In social work, we don't have extra fees. So anyhow, the tuition will be the tuition, whether the education is all remote or hybrid.
Okay, thank you for that. I do think folks kind of anticipated that that would be the answer. And another question that people had was, what is the School of Social Work Administration doing, as our bridge with the larger University of Michigan administration to advocate for us for a tuition decrease?
Well, the reality is if the tuition was decreased, the school would have less resources also. So it's really a double-edged sword. And I think in terms of services to students also. So that is one reality. Second of all, we've been really concerned about lower cost options for MSW education, and programs like our MicroMasters MOOC and the new Master Track program that are coming online are definitely lower cost programs for the first term. So that's a progressive thing we're trying to do as a school. The issue of tuition and high tuition is a national problem that has largely been driven by states withdrawing funding support for public institutions in particular. Others may want to add, but I just wanted to start off saying that.
So just to be clear, the School of Social Work Administration's stance is that they don't want tuition to be lowered for the winter semester.
It would have consequences. We would have to adapt to whatever the decision is, but it would have some negative consequences for our school.
Okay, thank you for your clarity in answering that. Another question a lot of people had was specifically around the CARES Act and why there wasn't more transparency from the School of Social Work around the CARE Act when it initially was sent out, because apparently those who first applied back in August, and those were med students, apparently got around $1,000, but lately students have been getting less than $100. And I think what folks were saying was that they feel that if they had known that this was an option for them, they would have applied sooner, and that would have really helped them.
Again, I'll start us off. The day we got the information about the CARE Act, we publicized it to students on MSW officials. So I'll ask our admission and student services office if they want to add anything. We do not manage the CARE Act. The CARE Act was not distributed school to school. It was managed centrally. And you know, we did, maybe everyone didn't see it, but we did advertise it.
Yeah, I just think there were some concerns around folks feeling like it wasn't widely advertised. So can you speak a little more to how it was advertised, how often it was advertised, how much it was pushed kind of, or if you would consider doing something differently in the future around this to make sure that transparency was increased?
I didn't introduce myself the last time I talked, so I'm Tim Collenbeck, Assistant Dean for Enrollment Management, and I'm going to ask Cerise Carrington, who is the Financial Aid Officer and works in our office, to go over how we communicated about this, because there were people applying for the CARES Act money back in winter semester, so it wasn't something that just became available in August.
Thank you, Tim. My name is Cerise Carrington, as Tim mentioned, and I serve as our Financial Aid Admission Student Services Officer here in the Office of Student Services. And I just wanted to just go back briefly, similar to what Dean Vadeka just mentioned, when the COVID funding through the CARES Act was originally released back in the winter semester, not only did the university's Office of Financial Aid send out an email to students, but we also did publicize it through the MSW official. Also over the summer, for any incoming students or new students to the program, we did include that information within our financial aid newsletter that students received as a part of their School of Social Work funding package as well. So that is essentially kind of that process. Obviously I think that there could have been, maybe a better push or maybe a frequent weekly reminder or something additional in additional newsletters that were sent out. And that can certainly be something moving forward that we can continue to push as long as that funding does become available.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that response. Yeah, I think I really appreciate your willingness to think about things that could maybe change with that going forwards. I think weekly reminders would be a great start. But we are going to have an action steps portion of this town hall. We can always discuss that then. There is, I'm just trying to be mindful of time. There's one more question I want to ask. There were a lot more questions in this topic area, but we don't have the time for everything, so we will send these out to you after the meeting. But this last question is the School of Social Work doing extra development work with donors to secure more funding for students suffering most from COVID-related issues?
Definitely, yes. And we have raised we've awarded over 70, I think close to $80,000, Tim, if I'm right, to students for COVID-specific financial aid needs. And of that money, some of it came from the school's reserves, but the rest of it, about 35,000 plus, was raised from donors, and we're continuing to raise funds. And I want to say, excuse me, our alumni are really very concerned and very motivated to give. So we think we will continue to work hard to raise more money.
Thank you very much. I think we should move on to our next section now, but I really appreciate you all taking the time to answer those questions. Our next section is something that's come up a lot. I'm sure you all know through email threads and conversations. This section is about health and safety precautions.
Hello, everyone. My name is Leslie Tutta. I'm the ombudsperson for Student Union, and I use they, them pronouns. So in the student portion, as well as the Google feedback form, some questions regarding health and safety came up, specifically regarding going to a completely remote structure, and then also more questions related to COVID testing. But for the sake of time, I'm going to group these questions together, and then again, as we mentioned, send these individual questions later on so that you can have time to individually address them if you choose to do so. So one specific question regarding a remote structure is, what specific institutional policies are preventing the school social work from moving to completely remote format?
So we were basing our decisions based on the campus's public health advice, because everything is health driven. And just today, around 5 o'clock or maybe a little bit before, we followed up the Washtenaw County and President Schlissel's email. And at this point, because again, it's public health driven, because of the rise of not only cases on campus, which are mostly in almost all in undergraduate residence halls, but also rises that are unrelated to the campus that are in the community. We did move just today to ask every instructor, as soon as feasible, to move their course format to remote. Because, and again, it's driven by the incidence of risk in the community and advised by and as part of the campus-wide decisions. The campus-wide decision just mandated this for undergraduates, but we thought in our community that it was important to move everything unless the instructor considers it essential to be in person. They can ask for a waiver, but otherwise we'll be moving to an all remote format at this point due to the level of COVID in the community.
Thank you for answering that. And one of the other questions related to COVID that came up during the Q&A portion earlier was if the school, specifically school social work, and then overall University of Michigan, was there any kind of model or prediction that could have helped to determine how bad the cases have gone? So in light of like what has happened today, was there any indication that this would be happening and things that could have prevented it?
So first of all, I want to say we just have had one case this fall, one case. So we have not been adversely affected yet. I want to say that the campus surveillance, and this is something that's important to do at the campus level because it gathers whole campus information. And that is what drove the president's decision today to move all undergraduate education online. And that informed our decision that it was time for our community to move to a primarily online format also. So so there has been very careful, very thoughtful, and very diligent public health monitoring of the whole campus environment with a variety of measures, and that informed these decisions.
Thank you so much. Okay, so another question, well, I think for the sake of time, again, we're going to be sending each of the individual questions to you all that was under this theme. But there were two specific like high impact questions, or a couple of high impact questions that we wanted to allow like time for you all to provide some more insight about. So one specific one wasn't necessarily a question, rather a concern about the school having a professor quit, or yeah, having a professor quit before being fired due to sexual misconduct. And there was a lot of students raising the concern of lack of transparency about what was happening and not knowing that that is something that happened. So I wanted to give you some time to give some more background on that.
Mhm. Yeah, I can address this because this is Associate Dean for Educational Programs, Lorraine Gutierrez. I can address that because if I'm only aware of one situation like this that has occurred in recent years. I don't know anything that's happened before, but I'm aware of one situation that somewhat fits this description. And so we, so basically what we did in this situation, there was a complaint by a student shared with one of the administrators, originally not myself. But that came to my office. I took on this role in January, so it came to my office right when I started this position on January 8th or something like that, whatever the date was, that this had come to us from a student, and we followed up using the policy that's required by the university. So the university has very strict policies for dealing with these kinds of incidents that are a reflection of federal Title IX laws. So we cannot just do whatever we think we might want to do. Everything has to be referred to an office called the Office of Institutional Equity, which goes by the initials OIE. And so we referred it to the OIE. At that point, the matter was out of our hands. They basically conducted their investigation in this case. All of this has to be highly confidential because it's a legal proceeding, and there are laws that relate to the confidentiality of any person who is bringing a complaint, so that that person's name cannot get out and be spread around. In terms of the complainant, I'm not talking about the person who was being accused, I'm talking about the complainant. They are also concerned that if word gets out, then there will be outside discussions that could get in the way of an investigation. They don't want anyone who's made a complaint to feel like they're going to be targeted for retaliation by the person who they are accusing, or any friends or family members of that person. They want it to be the most comfortable and supportive environment it can be for the complainant. And so for that reason, it was not shared or announced publicly to the student body. In fact, I'm surprised people know about it because it was never shared publicly, and I'm concerned that there may have been, I hope there were not any communications that could have compromised the investigation, let's just put it that way, because these are really significant and very serious legal matters. So we are really not allowed to discuss any specific cases. We are not allowed legally by the Office of Institutional Equity to be making announcements to the student body, for me to even say anything specific about this case. But I will tell you that the individual that was involved with this is no longer part of our community, is no longer teaching at the school. I can assure you will not ever be rehired by the school because of this, and because of the communications we did receive from OIE after they completed their investigation. And we'll never get, certainly would never get a positive recommendation from me if one were to come for me from another school of social work. And really, that's all I can tell you legally, because these things are really under very strict legal guidelines, and I don't want to compromise any efforts on the part of the university to prosecute and investigate these cases.
I appreciate you for giving us some more insight on that. I think a lot of the things that folks did know was mostly through the grapevine, and it did raise some concerns for folks. But I think providing some kind of background on what can legally happen and can is very helpful. So thank you. We're going to transition to another section, and Morgan will be leading that.
Yeah, so this is the last section. I do need to go super quickly, just because, again, I'm really trying to respect everyone's time and I want to have some time to discuss. Oh, there was a horn. To discuss to discuss some action steps near the end of this. So I'm just going to ask this question, share some of the specific concerns around this question, and give about a minute to respond. I know it's not very much, but again, we'll be sending these questions out after the town hall meeting today. So the question is, how are faculty being supported to deliver the best possible class experience? Another question that came up around this is if the School of Social Work is investing in additional tech support by hiring staff to support remote classes. How the fall student survey is being used to meet the needs and expectations of students in the future, and how faculty sabbaticals are being impacted by the School of Social Work's COVID response. So there's no need to specifically answer all of those right now. Again, you'll have time to do that later, but maybe just some things to take into consideration when quickly answering this question.
Start with the first one. This is Barb Hiltz. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the director of the MSW program. Hi, this is my first time talking tonight. So the first part of that question was about how did we prepare our faculty to teach online. So the first thing that we did, and we actually did this back in the winter semester when really quickly we all, as those of you who are around know, we had to transition really quickly to hybrid and remote, at that time, all remote learning. So we developed a training for all of our faculty. It's hosted on Canvas, and then we redid that training based on some feedback we had from actually student surveys in the winter semester, and also feedback from faculty. And then we relaunched that training over the summer for our faculty. So it taught faculty how to teach both online and totally remote. And it talked about strategies and pedagogy and tools. That was kind of the bulk of what was in that training program. We also have, and I don't know if a lot of students know this, but we have a position here called a learning experience designer. And so her job is to help people design learning activities that really match course objectives and aid learning. And so she, as you can imagine, has been really busy helping people transition to remote learning. We hired a doctoral student over the summer to help her as well. And we also have an instructional technologist. So her focus is on technologies that will help us achieve those learning objectives, which obviously helps in an environment like this where we've moved online. And then of course we have a really robust tech team. So they met with all faculty in the hybrid spaces. So if faculty were in the building trying to integrate remote learners into that same environment, the tech team was there to make sure that they could do that and do that well. The Center for Academic Innovation is another resource we've relied on. They've held workshops on how to teach online. So those are some of the things that we have had available. All sorts of individual and group consultations are still taking place.
And just to piggyback on that, and this is Ryan Banks, and I'm the IT director here at the school. But that's just what we were doing in the school, university-wide. That we had trainings every single day from ITS and from the Center for Academic Innovation. And there was a program put on through LSNA, the library, and a few other cross-campus units called Teach Tech. That was the Ready to Go Blue. And so every day from July through the start of September, there were trainings and workshops available for all instructors, not just our instructors, but across campus to attend and learn about how to make the best use of the technology to make the fall semester as good as it could possibly be.
Hello, I'm Joe Himley. I'm the Associate Dean for Faculty Affairs. The sabbaticals that faculty members earned can definitely be taken as usual during this period, although some may seek to defer their sabbatical because often travel is involved and travel is quite difficult at this period. But sabbaticals are, again, scheduled as they would usually be.
Thank you all for that information. We did promise the students an action step portion, and so we do want to move on to that.
unfortunately, Morgan's internet did cut out.
Right.
So
So I'll just go ahead and go over that. We know that time is very limited here. And we did compose all of the questions anonymously from the students that were posted today. We're obviously not asking you all to address every question specifically, and we will forward that information to you, and we can make this shareable to the whole student body as well. And we'll select these. So we'll go through it. Just give us a couple of days to go through these questions and categorize them based on category. However, while we have these questions, while there are many things that have been unaddressed, we would like to know how you all plan to move forward in actually implementing these things that we've discussed. Some of them are already in progress, but how do we develop this, what's going on, and this true transparency of concerns that students are having? So if anyone could kind of share how that would be proposed, go ahead.
Hi. It's Tim again. I think that we can, as Cerise mentioned, take the communication about the CARES funding back to our office and work on making sure that we enhance the communication plan for that. I think also on the admissions end, with the concern that was expressed, I think I'll take that to the recruitment admissions Student Services and Financial Aid Committee, which does set up the criteria for admission that's utilized in the admissions review. So those are two things that I'm taking away that I could do in response to the questions today.
Thank you for that. And is someone gonna? Okay. Well, thank you for that. Again, we would like, we do ask that once we share this information, you do give us a written example of how you will do that. So that way that it doesn't get lost. And that way we can hold you accountable, also holding us accountable to these concerns that we have and our relation with both of that. Is that going to be something that folks are willing to potentially do?
So can I speak to that real quick, Brianna? So this is Abigail Eiler. I am the chair of RASPA, and I'm a clinical assistant professor here in the school. One of the things that Tim just noted that I think is really important is for us to, one, increase student involvement on the committee. We actually have 2 seats that are open on that committee, and I would really like to discuss looking at adding anti-racist framework conceptualization questions to our admission. So those students that are interested, please, feel free to reach out to Kristen Miller regarding your interest or myself.
Or myself as well. Thank you for that, Abigail. And again, these are a lot of questions. These are a lot of things in different areas. So we're not expecting a response for how you all plan to do that right away. We just want to make sure that we know that this conversation is truly infiltration and being discussed around true action steps based on student concerns. So we have about 5 minutes left. I just want to allow people to ask to just, for panelists, please share anything that maybe we have missed or that you would like to address that we haven't. And if there are no, I'll leave that space open. So I just do that.
Brianna, may I say something? I was looking at the Q&A earlier. I don't think the questions are up there anymore, but there were several questions. Why do we follow what the university is doing? Why don't we chart our own way? There were several questions that were like that. And I just want to clarify a couple of things. Number one, when you say the university decisions, the university decisions usually involve all the deans, all the schools, and the deans get information from their school. And the provost and president are really good about an inclusive process for decision making. So, so the university versus the school, it's not like a bureaucracy. We have a shared governance model and everyone has input into what the decisions are made. The same is true in the school, but the same is true for the university. So in many cases, I don't see it as adversarial, and I think they're good decisions, and we've had an opportunity to have input in them. So I just want to clarify that it's not someone dictating to us without a sense of our participation in the decision. And we aim to provide that kind of inclusive and shared decision-making within the school as well. And we use our committee structures, and that's why student participation is so important, because that is where most of the work gets done.
Thank you for that. So in our last 3 minutes, I do want to really thank you all. Thank you, panelists, for being here, for one, being transparent about things and addressing these very difficult questions, and really trying to work with us, student body, trying to get these issues resolved. So thank you for that. Thank you for our attendees. We really appreciate you all being here and posing very thought-provoking questions in relation to how we can better our school as a community. So thank you all, and thank you, moderators, for kindly sharing and discussing this with everyone. So any last comments, please feel free to jump in our last 2 minutes, but thank you all again for making time tonight.
I want to thank the student union for convening this town hall and for putting so much work into putting together a really good agenda and raising up student voice. We're here for this. I mean, the school exists for the students. It doesn't exist for the faculty or for the admin, what you call the admin, which are the faces that you're seeing. I'm never quite sure exactly always who you think of when you're saying admin. So I really want to thank you for organizing this. And I think this, I appreciate having more of a give and take and more of a discussion kind of format than our usual town halls, because we need to be having greater communication within the school across all different levels. So thank you.
Thanks for that comment. And Morgan also, thank you for helping spearhead this along with many other folks who have been a part of this as well.
Yeah, thank you all so much for your participation. I want to apologize. My internet briefly cut out. So if you saw me randomly leave for a second, that was why. But again, yeah, we really appreciate that you all took the time to be here. There will be more time for admin to answer questions and develop action steps later on. But I'm so glad that we had a start to this today. Thank you.
I would like to thank everyone as well. And I think it was great to have this as the beginning of the conversation. And I appreciate the opportunity for us to be able to follow up on these different issues. We covered a lot of ground in an hour. And so I appreciate that we were able to do that, but also that we have the opportunity to follow up on some of these issues.
One thing that didn't come up tonight is winter semester. So I guess I just want to say that stay tuned, keep an eye out for some invitations for students to give us some more feedback about winter semester and the way we're going to organize winter semester.
And I want to add, if you like this, students, if you like this format, I thought it was terrific. Thank you for doing such a good job, but this might be a good format to have a periodic conversation about, so there can really be some dialogue and interaction and not just reliance on written communication.
Thank you. And I do just want to real quickly remind folks that this meeting was being recorded. So if you are unable to catch the entirety of this town hall, we can share that out. But thank you again, and hope you all have a great night.
Yes, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.